The morning sun cast long shadows across the driveway of the massive glass and steel mansion that sat like a crown jewel atop Beverly Hills. Eliza Montgomery's fingers drummed impatiently on her marble kitchen counter as she checked her watch for the third time in 5 minutes. Her perfectly styled hair and tailored suit stood in stark contrast to the chaos she felt inside. Today was supposed to be the day her company launched its newest smart home system, but a missing component had thrown everything into disarray. "This is completely unacceptable," she muttered to her assistant over the phone. "Tell the board we're still on track. I won't accept another delay." At 45, Eliza had built her tech empire from scratch, turning a small startup into a billion-dollar corporation that specialized in cutting-edge home automation. People called her ruthless, demanding, brilliant. She preferred efficient. In her world, there was no room for mistakes or excuses. The security system beeped, alerting her to a vehicle at the gate. On the monitor, she saw a delivery truck idling outside her property. Finally, the delivery driver waited patiently as the gate slowly opened, then stuttered to a halt, halfway open. He frowned, trying again to buzz the intercom, but the system flashed an error message. After a moment's hesitation, he squeezed through the gap with his package and walked up the long driveway. Eliza stormed out the front door before he even reached the steps. "You're late," she called out, not bothering with a greeting. "That package was supposed to be here yesterday." The driver, a tall man with kind eyes and a patient expression, nodded apologetically. "I understand your frustration, ma'am. There was a mix-up at the warehouse. I came as soon as the package cleared processing. Do you have any idea what your incompetence has cost me?" Eliza snatched the electronic signature pad from his hands. "An entire product launch delayed because someone couldn't do their one job correctly." If her words stung, the driver didn't show it. Instead, he calmly explained, "Actually, I noticed your gate security system is malfunctioning. The error code suggests it might be a network vulnerability. I've seen this model before." Eliza cut him off with a laugh that held no humor. "Now the delivery man is a security expert? Stick to your packages." "I was just trying to help," he said quietly. "That particular model has a known backdoor that hackers have been exploiting recently." Something about his confident tone made Eliza pause. She looked at him, really looked at him for the first time. His uniform was clean and pressed despite the hot day, his delivery truck spotless. And there was something in his eyes, intelligence, dignity, and a quiet determination she recognized from her own mirror. "Fix it and I'll call you boss," she said sarcastically, signing the pad with a flourish and thrusting it back at him. "Until then, try to deliver packages on time. That's your job." She turned and walked back toward her house, the package tucked under her arm, not seeing how the driver's expression shifted from surprise to thoughtfulness as he watched her go. Inside, Eliza ripped open the package, relief flooding through her as she confirmed the specialized microchips had finally arrived. She immediately called her development team. "The components are here. We can proceed with the launch next week." She was already moving on, the delivery driver forgotten as she plunged back into her world of deadlines and demands. But outside, standing by his truck, the driver wasn't so quick to forget. He pulled out his phone and began researching the security system model he'd spotted at her gate. His name was David, and while delivering packages paid his bills, his passion and expertise lay elsewhere. He stared thoughtfully at the half-open gate with its blinking error light, an idea forming in his mind. The encounter could have ended there, just another unpleasant moment in a day filled with challenges. But sometimes the universe has other plans. And sometimes the people we dismiss most quickly are exactly the ones we need the most. Part 2. The rest of David's delivery route kept him busy until late afternoon. Every time he dropped off a package, his mind wandered back to the security system at the billionaire's mansion. He'd recognized the model immediately. It was the same high-end system he'd been studying for his cybersecurity certification. The blinking error code wasn't just a simple malfunction. It was a sign of something potentially much more serious. As he drove between deliveries, David made a decision that would change the course of his life. Once he finished his route, instead of heading home to his small apartment where textbooks and online courses awaited, he turned his truck back toward Beverly Hills. The sun was beginning its descent when David parked across the street from Eliza Montgomery's property. From his vantage point, he could see the gate was still stuck halfway open, a glaring security vulnerability for someone of her wealth and status. He grabbed his laptop bag from behind the seat and walked up to the security booth where a guard sat, looking bored. "Excuse me," David said politely. "I was here earlier making a delivery and I noticed a problem with the security system. I think I can help fix it." The guard looked suspicious. Miss Montgomery didn't mention anything about a repair technician. David smiled. "She probably didn't think I was serious. I work in delivery to pay the bills, but I'm almost finished with my cybersecurity degree. This is actually the system I'm specializing in." The guard made a call, speaking quietly into his radio. After a brief conversation, he shrugged. "The regular tech guys haven't been able to fix it remotely, and they can't send anyone until tomorrow. Wait here." 10 minutes later, David found himself escorted to the control panel of the main gate by a skeptical head of security, a former police officer named Ray. "You have 20 minutes, Ray said gruffly, "and I'll be watching everything you do." David nodded, already opening his laptop. "That's reasonable. I'd do the same in your position." He connected his computer to the system and began running diagnostics, his fingers flying across the keyboard with practiced ease. This wasn't his first time working with this particular system. He'd spent countless late nights in online forums discussing its weaknesses and solutions. "See this?" David pointed to a stream of code on his screen. "Someone's been trying to breach the system. They're using the manufacturer's backdoor, the one they never removed from the production code. It's like leaving a spare key under the mat, except it's a digital key that lots of people know about." Ray leaned in, his skepticism fading as he watched David navigate through the system. "Can you block it?" "Better than that," David replied, pulling up another window. "I can eliminate it altogether and add a custom patch that will alert you if anyone tries again." As David worked, he explained each step in simple terms. Ray moved from suspicion to interest, then to genuine respect as the delivery man turned security expert, methodically fixed problems that had been plaguing the system for weeks. The 20 minutes stretched into an hour, and David lost himself in the work, the joy of solving complex problems evident in his focused expression. He was so absorbed that he didn't notice the sleek Tesla pulling up the driveway until its door slammed shut. Eliza Montgomery stepped out, her heels clicking on the pavement as she approached the security booth. Her expression darkened when she recognized the delivery driver from earlier, now somehow inside her security perimeter, with a laptop connected to her system. "What is the meaning of this?" she demanded, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. Ray straightened immediately. "Ma'am, he's actually fixing the security vulnerability, the one that nobody else could figure out." "I told you I'd try," David said quietly, not looking up from his screen. "Just give me 5 more minutes to secure this last access point." Eliza opened her mouth to object, but the words died on her lips as she looked over his shoulder at the screen. Even with her technical knowledge, she could see he was doing something sophisticated, something well beyond what most IT professionals could manage. "How do you know how to do this?" she asked, her tone more curious than accusatory now. David's fingers continued typing as he replied, "I've been studying cybersecurity for 3 years now. This system has known vulnerabilities that haven't been patched by the manufacturer. I'm part of an online community that develops custom solutions." Eliza watched in silence as David finished his work, closed the connection, and demonstrated how the gate now opened and closed smoothly, with no error messages. The security dashboard showed a much more robust protection level than before. "I also added a monitoring protocol that will alert you to any unusual access attempts," he explained, showing her a simple app he'd configured for their phones. "You'll know immediately if someone tries to breach the system again." The sun had fully set by the time David packed up his equipment. The security staff looked at him with newfound respect. And even Eliza seemed unsure how to react to this delivery driver who had casually solved a problem her expensive tech team couldn't fix. As David prepared to leave, Eliza stepped forward. "Why did you come back?" "After how I spoke to you earlier, most people would have just walked away." David paused, considering his answer carefully. "Because I knew I could help. And because sometimes people are more than what others assume about them at first glance." The words hung in the air between them, a gentle rebuke wrapped in wisdom. Eliza Montgomery, who prided herself on being able to size people up instantly, realized she might have made a serious misjudgment. "I think," she said slowly, "we should continue this conversation inside." Part 3. The inside of Eliza's mansion was exactly what David expected: sleek, modern, and expensive. Original artwork hung on walls, and minimalist furniture that probably cost more than his yearly salary filled the vast living room. A wall of windows offered a breathtaking view of Los Angeles glittering below. "Tea? Coffee?" Eliza offered, her tone noticeably more respectful than during their first encounter. "Coffee would be great," David replied, setting his laptop bag carefully beside an armchair that looked too pristine to actually sit in. As Eliza prepared 2 cups in the open kitchen, David noticed the prototype smart home devices scattered around the room, some in various stages of disassembly. He recognized the Montgomery Tech logo on several components. "You're working on integrating the new T9 processors into your home automation system," he observed. "That's what was in the package I delivered." Eliza looked up sharply. "How do you know about T9 processors?" "They haven't been announced publicly yet," David smiled. "I follow tech developments closely. There were rumors on specialized forums. They're supposed to be 40% more energy efficient, while handling much more complex security protocols." She handed him a cup of coffee and sat across from him, studying his face with new interest. "You're not just studying cybersecurity, are you? You understand the whole ecosystem." "I believe everything's connected," David explained, taking a sip of the perfectly brewed coffee. "Security isn't just about keeping bad actors out. It's about building systems that work together seamlessly while protecting the user's privacy and safety." For the next hour, they talked, really talked, about technology, security, and innovation. David explained how he'd spotted 3 additional vulnerabilities in her home system, just by observing the components around the room. Eliza found herself taking mental notes, impressed despite herself. "So you deliver packages by day and solve complex security problems by night?" she asked finally. David laughed. "And on weekends and lunch breaks and basically any free moment. The delivery job pays the bills while I finish my degree. I also work part-time at a computer repair shop and do some freelance coding." 3 jobs? And school? Eliza couldn't hide her surprise. "Plus taking care of my grandmother," David added. "She raised me after my parents died. Now she needs someone to look after her." Eliza set down her coffee cup. Something uncomfortable shifted inside her, an emotion she rarely allowed herself to feel: shame. She had dismissed this man completely, seeing only a delivery uniform instead of the person wearing it. "Why don't you work in tech full-time? With your skills, you could command a good salary." David's expression remained neutral, but something flickered in his eyes. "I've applied to over 60 positions in the last year. I have the knowledge, but not the credentials yet. Most hiring managers don't get past the first page of my resume. Delivery driver, no bachelor's degree, self-taught coder." The implication hung in the air. People like Eliza, hiring managers, executives, gatekeepers of the tech world, had been shutting doors before he could even knock. "Show me what else you can do," Eliza said suddenly, gesturing toward her home office. "I have a network issue that my team has been struggling with for weeks." David followed her into a state-of-the-art home office. Multiple monitors displayed complex data flows and system architecture diagrams. Eliza pointed to one screen showing a network map with a flashing red section. "Our new smart home hub keeps dropping connections when multiple devices request access simultaneously. The engineers think it's a hardware limitation, but I'm not convinced." David studied the diagrams, asking a few pointed questions about the system architecture. Then he opened his laptop and requested access to run some tests. Eliza watched as he worked, his focus absolute, muttering occasionally to himself as he followed digital pathways through her system. After 20 minutes of intense concentration, he looked up with a satisfied expression. "It's not hardware. It's a resource allocation problem in the priority handler. When multiple high-priority devices request access simultaneously, the system can't decide which to serve first, so it creates a processing loop." He turned his laptop to show her a simple solution he'd coded on the spot, an elegant fix that would take her engineers days or weeks to develop. "May I?" he asked, gesturing toward her system. Eliza hesitated only briefly before nodding. David implemented the solution, and they both watched as the red warning indicators turned green across the network map. The system was running more smoothly than it had in months. "You just solved in half an hour what my team of PhDs couldn't fix in 3 weeks, Eliza said, her voice quiet with realization. David shrugged. Sometimes you need practical experience, not just theoretical knowledge. I've built systems from scratch with limited resources. You learn to identify bottlenecks quickly when you can't just throw more expensive hardware at the problem. As the night grew late, David gathered his things to leave. At the door, Eliza handed him a business card. Not her standard card with just her company information, but her personal card with her direct number. "Call me tomorrow," she said. "I think we have more to discuss about your future." David accepted the card with a nod. "Thank you for giving me a chance to show what I can do." As he walked down the driveway toward the now perfectly functioning gate, David couldn't help but smile. He hadn't come back to prove her wrong or to make her feel bad about how she'd treated him. He'd come back because he saw a problem he could fix. But sometimes fixing one problem leads to solving much bigger ones. Behind him, Eliza watched his departure, already forming plans in her mind. She had built her company by recognizing opportunity when it presented itself. And tonight, opportunity had arrived in a delivery uniform. Part 4. The next morning, David woke up early in his modest one-bedroom apartment. Sunlight filtered through thin curtains as he made coffee in his small kitchen. The walls were lined with bookshelves, not filled with fancy novels or decorative items, but packed with technical manuals, textbooks, and countless notebooks, filled with his handwritten code. His grandmother's photo sat on his desk, next to his computer setup, a cobbled-together system of monitors and processors that he'd built and rebuilt over the years. She smiled from the frame, her kind eyes seeming to approve of everything he'd accomplished. "Big day today, Grandma," he said to the photo as he sipped his coffee. "That billionaire lady actually wants to talk to me. Again." David got dressed in his best clothes, khaki pants and a button-down shirt he usually saved for job interviews, and headed to his grandmother's nursing home before his meeting with Eliza. The facility wasn't fancy, but it was clean and the staff were kind. It took most of his income to keep her there, but he never complained. She had given him everything. This was the least he could do in return. "My smart boy," his grandmother said when he told her about fixing the security system. Her hands were gnarled with arthritis but strong as she gripped his. "I always told you that brain of yours would open doors someday. It was just a simple fix, Grandma. Don't get too excited yet." But her pride warmed him as he kissed her goodbye and promised to visit again soon with all the details. Across town, Eliza Montgomery was having a very different morning. She sat in her company's glass-walled conference room, surrounded by executives in expensive suits. On the screen behind her, David's simple solution to their network problem was displayed, working flawlessly in their test environment. "This fixes the resource allocation issue we've been struggling with for months," Eliza explained. "It's elegant, efficient, and it was created in 30 minutes by a delivery driver with no formal engineering degree." Her CTO, a Stanford graduate with 20 years in the industry, looked skeptical. "That's not possible. The problem requires advanced knowledge of parallel processing and resource management." "Exactly," Eliza replied, "which he has despite not having the credentials we typically require. He's self-taught, working 3 jobs to support himself and his grandmother while finishing his degree." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. How many other brilliant minds had they overlooked because they didn't fit the expected profile? "I want to meet him," the CTO said finally. "You will," Eliza replied. "But first I'm going to offer him a job, and not an entry-level position." Her assistant interrupted with a message. David had arrived for their meeting. Eliza dismissed the executive team and asked for David to be shown in. She watched their faces as he entered the room in his simple clothes, noting the surprise and skepticism. She had looked at him the same way just yesterday. After the executives filed out, Eliza gestured for David to take a seat. "Your solution is running in our test environment. It's perfect." David nodded, clearly pleased, but not surprised. "I thought it would work. Your system architecture is solid. It just needed that one adjustment." "Tell me about your education," Eliza said, getting straight to the point. "The real education, not just the formal schooling." David took a deep breath. "I've been taking things apart and putting them back together since I was a kid. Computers, phones, anything electronic I could get my hands on. When my parents died, we couldn't afford much, but the local library had free internet. I taught myself programming languages, network architecture, security protocols. And now? Now I'm 6 months away from finishing my associate's degree in cybersecurity. I take online courses from MIT and Stanford through their free programs. I participate in open-source security projects and bug bounty programs when I have time. Eliza leaned forward. What do you want, David? What's your goal in all this? The question seemed to catch him off guard. For a moment he was silent, considering. I want to build things that matter, he said finally. Systems that protect people, that make technology accessible and safe for everyone, not just those who can afford the premium versions. I want to use what I know to make a difference. Eliza nodded slowly. That's a good answer. Here's my offer. I want you to join Montgomery Tech as a security consultant with a focus on our smart home division. Competitive salary, benefits, flexible hours so you can finish your degree. David's eyes widened slightly, but he remained composed. That's generous, but I have some conditions. Now it was Eliza's turn to be surprised. Conditions? I won't be just a token hire, the delivery guy who got lucky. I want real responsibilities, real challenges, and I want to create a pathway, program for others like me, people with the skills but not the traditional credentials. Eliza smiled, a genuine smile that transformed her usually serious face. That's exactly what I was hoping you'd say. I built my company from nothing, David. I know talent when I see it. Even if I was too quick to dismiss it yesterday, they were. Spent the next hour outlining what would become Montgomery Tech's Practical Innovation Division, a team specifically designed to bring in unconventional thinkers from diverse backgrounds. By the time David left the building, he had not only a job offer but a vision for something much bigger. That evening, as David sat beside his grandmother's bed, telling her about his day, his phone buzzed with a message from Eliza. Contract ready whenever you are. Also, bring your ideas for the Pathway program. I want this launched within 6 months. E. See, Grandma? David said, showing her the message. Doors are opening. His grandmother patted his hand. It wasn't luck, my boy. You made your own door and walked right through it. As David drove home that night, he thought about how quickly life could change. Yesterday, he was just a delivery driver being dismissed by a billionaire. Today, he was her newest executive with a chance to reshape an industry. All because he chose to help rather than hold a grudge. The lights of the city shone around him, full of possibility. Sometimes the most unexpected encounters lead to the most extraordinary opportunities. And sometimes, the person you least expect becomes the one who changes everything. Part 5. 6 months passed in a blur of activity. David's small desk in the corner of Montgomery Tech's R&D department had quickly been replaced by a proper office with a nameplate. David Wilson, Director of Security Innovation. The title still felt strange to him, but the work felt exactly right. His first project had been implementing his security patches across all of Montgomery Tech's product lines, strengthening their systems against the very vulnerabilities he had once studied late at night. The improvements had been so significant that the company's insurance premiums for cybersecurity coverage dropped by 30%. But it was the Pathway program that truly transformed both David's life and Montgomery Tech. Launched with Eliza's full backing, it sought out talented individuals from unconventional backgrounds, community colleges, technical schools, self-taught, programmers and career changers with practical experience. Today was graduation day for the first cohort of 20 Pathway participants. The Montgomery Tech auditorium was filled with employees, families, and media as Eliza took the stage. When I started this company 15 years ago, she began, I believed that innovation came from the brightest minds with the best education money could buy. I wasn't entirely wrong, but I wasn't entirely right either. She gestured toward the graduates seated in the front row. These 20 individuals have shown us that brilliance doesn't only grow in ivy-covered buildings. It grows in community, college classrooms, in public libraries, in garages and bedrooms where people teach themselves coding late at night after working full shifts elsewhere. David watched from the side of the stage, thinking about his own journey. His grandmother sat in the audience in her wheelchair, beaming with pride. Thanks to his new salary, he'd been able to move her to a better facility with more comprehensive care. The delivery route, the computer repair shop, the constant scramble to make ends meet. All of that was behind him now. Eliza continued her speech, her voice growing more passionate. 6 months ago, I made a terrible mistake. I judged someone based on their uniform instead of their abilities. I nearly missed out on one of the most valuable team members this company has ever had. She turned toward David, gesturing for him to join her on stage. Reluctantly, he stepped into the spotlight. David Wilson came to my house as a delivery driver. When he pointed out a security flaw in my system, I mocked him. "Fix it and I'll call you boss," I said. A ripple of uncomfortable laughter moved through the audience, and you know what? He did fix it. He showed up after his shift and solved a problem my expensive security team couldn't fix. Then he went on to solve several more problems that had been plaguing our products for months. David stood quietly beside her, uncomfortable with the attention, but understanding the importance of the moment. Today, the security protocols that David designed have become the backbone of our newest product line. The encryption method he developed is now being licensed to other companies, and this program, finding hidden talent in places most tech companies never look, was his idea. Eliza turned to face David directly. "So today, in front of all these witnesses, I'm keeping my promise." She held out her hand. "Thank you, boss." The audience erupted in applause and laughter as David shook her hand, his face showing surprise and then amusement at the role reversal. As the ceremony continued, with each pathway graduate receiving their official job offers, David reflected on the journey. Among the graduates were former retail workers, a former truck driver, a grandmother who had taught herself coding while raising her grandchildren, and a janitor who had been quietly solving network problems at the school where he worked. After the ceremony, at the reception, David found himself surrounded by reporters asking about his remarkable story. He answered politely, but kept turning the conversation back to the program and its graduates. "The real story isn't about me," he insisted. "It's about recognizing that talent and innovation can come from anywhere. It's about looking beyond assumptions." Later, as the crowd thinned, David and Eliza stood together looking at the wall where photos of the Pathway graduates were displayed alongside their success stories. "We're expanding the program next year," Eliza said. "Double the participants, and 3 other tech companies have asked to partner with us," David nodded. "We need to make sure it stays true to its purpose. This isn't about charity. It's about finding the best people regardless of background." "Agreed." Eliza smiled. "The board meeting next week, I want you to present the expansion plan." "Me? That's usually your territory." "Well, this is your program. Besides," she added with a wink, "I'm just following my boss's orders." David laughed, shaking his head at how far they'd both come from that first encounter. As he drove home that evening, David called his grandmother to make sure she had gotten back to her facility safely. "I'm fine, dear," she assured him, "but I want to know, how does it feel? Being called boss by a billionaire?" David thought about it. "Honestly, it's not about the title. It's about being seen, really seen for what I can do, not what people assume I can do based on my job or my background." "Well, I always saw you," his grandmother said softly. "And now the world is catching up. Love you, Grandma." "Love you too, boss," she replied with a chuckle. 1 year later, Montgomery Tech launched its revolutionary new smart home security system, one that made premium-level security features accessible at various price points instead of just for the wealthy. On the small information card included with each device was a simple message: "Built by talent from all walks of life, for homes of all kinds." And in the company's annual report, a photo showed Eliza Montgomery and David Wilson standing side by side, equal partners in the company's most successful division. The caption read, "Innovation doesn't care what uniform you wear. Neither do we." The story of the delivery driver and the billionaire became legend in Silicon Valley, a reminder that sometimes the greatest talent is found in the most unexpected places. All it takes is one person willing to look past assumptions and another person brave enough to prove them wrong.